who else is hoping for the Andrew Tackett show at the UFC BJJ 1 event on Wednesday? I'm Ross. This is the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle, previewing the UFC BJJ 1 event that is coming off the back of the Road to the Title reality show, which has given us two finals. In the welterweight division, we've got Andrew Tackett against Andy Varela. In the lightweight division, we've got Carlos Enrique against Daniel Moreira. And then the coaches are going to face off for the bantamweight title. That's Mikey Musumeci against Rerrison Gabriel. So now all those names are out the way, I want to talk about one grappler in particular, and that's Andrew Tackett. And I think not only should Andrew win this match, and I think Andrew will win this match, and I'll explain a little bit why. I think the UFC have to be hoping that Andrew Tackett wins this match, because he is by far the most marketable guy they have on this show. He's got bigger star potential than Mikey, who as the coach kind of carried the show a bit. He has the potential to be the best grappler that the UFC have signed so far, along with his brother William, who I think, like, going forward, the UFC have to be thinking to themselves, we need to build these UFC BJJ shows around the Tackett brothers. So not only am I hoping that Andrew wins on Wednesday night, and wins in a really exciting fashion, but I hope that the UFC have thought about who he could face next as the welterweight champion, and we get some exciting matches. If you want to see a previous match between Andrew Tackett and Andy Varela, I believe their final from the West Coast trials in 2024 is on YouTube. And that wasn't that long ago, and I'd expect this match to kind of go the same way. Andrew pretty much dominated every aspect of the match, scored more than one takedown in the match, but scored a takedown in the period where points were awarded in ADCC rules to seal a 2-0 victory over Andy Varela. I think Andrew will have too much all round. I think Andy Varela is a guy who doesn't give you the most exciting matches, but can give you exciting moments. So you need to stay on guard all the time, because he'll kind of lull you into a false sense of a lack of action happening, maybe with a bit of inactivity and a bit of trash talk, and then he's looking for you to make a mistake and then exploit the mistake to the full effect. I don't think he'll be able to make Andrew make that kind of error, and even if he does, I think Andrew's probably too sharp to be snagged in a way that he's controllable for a finish, like in a Darce choke, for example. So I'd expect Andrew to have too much all round. Andrew's looked really good in the competition so far. 2 submission victories. His semi-final one over Jason Nolf with a lovely back take off an attempted fireman's carry from Jason Nolf. Varela's semi won over Davis Asare after Davis had made a decent start to the match, but eventually wore down and was then victim of a Darce choke submission. So, as I've said, Tackett's a favourite. I think where Andrew is in his career and where he's trying to get to, like, he has to win this match. He is a potential ADCC world champion, CJI tournament champion. That's kind of level we're talking about with Andrew. I think Andy Varela, if he wins like a US trials to get to the ADCC, that would be awesome for him. Maybe he has the potential to win a match at the UFC, at the ADCC. So many initials to deal with. So Andy, if he wins a West Coast trials, if he gets the ADCC and wins a match, I think like that's pretty much like his ceiling from what I've seen. But I think Andrew has potential to be a world champion. So if he wins this match, he gets the belt. Let's see what the UFC do with him. But I think they should be going full steam ahead with the Tackett brothers. In the other match, coming off the back of the road to the title tournament, in the lightweight division, I think Carlos Enrique has to be a big favourite over Daniil to win. Carlos has looked really strong, powerful, sharp in his matches, so I'd expect him to win. I think the lightweight bracket got blown up a little bit with some of the bigger names going out. Unfortunately, Josh Cisneros, who I had as my favourite to win the bracket, failed his weight cut, so he was out of the tournament. I think whoever wins this match, facing Josh, is the next logical match. We've also got Keith Krikorian, who had a tough draw because I think Keith was the 1 seed, and then the way they seeded the bracket, Isaac Doderlein, who world champion in the gi, but because he didn't have a strong no-gi pedigree, was seeded 8. Keith got Isaac in the first match, so Isaac got the win, then lost in the semi to Carlos with a brutal arm lock submission. But let's just talk about that Isaac v Keith match, because I think it shows kind of like every jiu-jitsu event, promotion, organization doesn't have a flawless scoring system. To be fair, there are promotions out there that are consistently trying to work on it to improve it, and hopefully UFC becomes one of them. But I think with the 3 5-minute rounds, what we saw at the end of round 2, if memory serves me well, and bear in mind there's been, 8 of these shows so far, and I'm going off memory, at the end of round 2, like, Isaac looked really, really tired, but then got a second wind in the break coming out for round 3, and then was able to get the victory in a decision after, doing better in round 3. So it just shows that the round system isn't a flawless way to structure a match. I think with the scoring system as well, in UFC BJJ, they really favor submission attempts. I always find that a tricky thing to judge a match on, because what is a legitimate submission attempt? So I think in some of these matches we've seen guys sitting down and try to spam leg locks because they think that's the easiest way to convince the judge is that they've attempted a submission. But to me, there's a big difference between a submission grip and an actual legitimate submission that had to be defended. So, and I think the UFC, perhaps from what I've seen on the show, is leaning too much towards the former, where guys can win favor by looking like they've got grips and then, not actually having a huge amount of submission threat in the position. You need really, really knowledgeable judges if you're going to play it that way. And even then, it's very hard to judge from the side as to how strong a grip is. Often the tell is the reaction of the opponent, but if you're got a good poker face, then you might not give too much away. So I just think, the round system we saw is it's not perfect. It seems like a fine way to go about it, but I think if you're trying to convince people it's a better way than a straight 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I'm not necessarily convinced. And then Polaris kind of lies in the middle, because they'll run with no rounds, no breaks, just one set at time, but they'll divvy the match up. So they're trying to do it that way. So we've seen some different ideas out there, and all have their pluses and minuses. You let me know in the comments what way of structuring a jiu-jitsu match and what way of scoring it you prefer. I think undeniable is that having the action in a pit or an alley or a bowl, whatever you want to call it, something with sides where the sides aren't at 90-degree angles, so we get MMA wall wrestling like we get in the cage. That's a whole grappling art in itself. But the bowl, the pit, the alley, it encourages the match to stay in the center, and we don't get loads of resets when guys spill off the edge. So I think that is a really, really good environment for grappling, and hopefully we see some more of it Don't think IBJJF, for example, will ever go down that route. So their traditionalist approach with the mats, they need a big mat space and they need referees that are really, really good at keeping the match in the center so we don't get loads of resets and awkward resets, which you often see in the gi where it's like difficult to recreate the grips, etc. But I think a lot of events, yeah, if they can construct these kind of environments, I think it's been proven to be a success. To be fair to the UFC, the matches on the road to the title show, they were all pretty exciting. Well, a lot of them were pretty exciting, and any unexciting moments seemed to get clipped out, which I wasn't complaining about at all. And we got quite a high submission rate. I think, like, when building a tournament, not every grappler in the tournament has to be an absolute superstar. Like, it's good to have a bit of disparity, and that can create more matches where submissions are likely. I think both tournaments were like they were decently enough constructed. I think, like, hopefully the narrative on the welterweight division after we've seen it play out was just like it was Andrew Tackett's, and I think that's great, you know. If that's the story coming out of that. The lightweight, like I said, got blown up a bit by some of the bigger names going out. So I talked about Josh Cisneros and Keith, and then Gianni Grippo had a tough match against Carlos Enrique. So, like, in the first round, so we've ended up with three of the bigger names, the more recognizable names in the division going out. Hopefully the shows in future can kind of rehab them a bit, as it were, and then get them in line for title shots for whomever comes out. Let's just talk about a few other things that I noticed on the show. I think, like, there was a couple of grapplers that did look to, I don't want to say struggle a bit, but have less cardio than expected. And I think that's maybe, like, it sounds like the show was put together at the end quite late. Like, I heard Chris Wojcik talk on a podcast about how he was in line for the show and then decided not to do it. But it seemed like things were happening towards the end. Maybe guys they wanted weren't able to do it, decided not to do it. So I wonder if a few grapplers entered undercooked, and we didn't see the best of them. That's why I mentioned, like, I hope they have a future plan going forward for the Tackett brothers. Mikey, who I'd favour or win against Rerrison, probably by leg lock. I mean, Rerrison's, like, become more known recently following his performance at Pans, where he beat Baby Shark. I think earlier at a Euros, he beat Zach Kaina. So, like, he's really, really good. But I think Mikey would have to be heavily favoured to win by a leg lock in the match. And then the question is, like, well, what's next for Mikey? I think in the lightweight division, whoever comes through favouring Carlos, then it's got to be Keith or Josh next. And then Andrew, like, the welterweight division isn't as strong, so I hope they have a few grapplers waiting in the wings to come into the promotion and give some opponents for Andrew and his brother William. But you let me know what you think about the show on Wednesday night, and you let me know, if you want to, please let me know though, your thoughts on the road to the title show. Did you enjoy it? What do you think about the scoring system, the environment? Do you think, like, we've got the right guys in the finals, having seen all the guys face off? Do you think anyone was kind of hard done by, or would you have liked to see anyone do a little bit better? And one thing I'm really looking for in this as well is, like, what's the engagement like on the UFC BJJ promotion? Because I think, like, there's been claims from the UFC BJJ side about how well the show seems to be doing. What I will say is, like, at ground level, I don't see, like, the most amount of buzz about the event. So I've seen some people question the numbers online. And if you want me to get more into, like, the business and promotional side of it, please let me know. But I don't know if that's what the audience is here for. All I will say is like having another promotion offering another product should be good for grappling. So I hope to see these events continue, but doesn't seem to be the most amount of buzz. So we'll see what the engagement's like from the Oracle audience, who I know for certain are massive fans of CJI. So we'll see what kind of level UFC BJJ is pitching at. But like, yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about the Road to the Title show and what you think about this UFC BJJ 1 event. Will we get the Andrew Tackett show? I think the UFC has to be hoping that we do. And for Andrew's career trajectory, he has to be hoping that he can pull this off with a spectacular victory. But there's loads of grappling coming up in the near future. We have Polaris and Aiga happening really soon, both running different formats, but basically squads events. So the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle will be back with coverage of those events, and I'll let you know what I thought about the UFC BJJ 1 show once I've seen it.